Hey guys, Alice here, and today I wanted to talk about the hunting horn in regards to the upcoming release of Monster Hunter World. And I wanted to talk about the hunting horn because it's a weapon that I usually hear a lot of people disregard as more of a support weapon and not being as good as the other ones in Monster Hunter. Now, it's definitely true that the weapon is themed as a support weapon, but Monster Hunter is a game that's done a really good job of making all the weapons good to use. And I want to be clear in that I'm not saying the hunting horn is really good for damage. It is true that if you're playing solo, it's probably going to be closer towards the bottom end of speedruns. Like, it does do less damage. But only so much that you'll take a couple extra minutes per quest or so. And that's in single player. When you look at multiplayer and factor in how much you'll be boosting the stats of your team, having a hunting horn in your party actually comes out to being one of the best weapons that you can have on your team. Though a downside is that multiple hunting horns don't stack their buffs, so unlike any other weapon where you could perfectly well have a team of 4, it's best to just have one hunting horn in your party online. And speaking of those buffs, let's just go over the core function of the hunting horn. The gimmick, so to speak, that it has is that every basic attack you do plays a corresponding note. And when you've assembled the notes in the right order, you can then do what's called the recital attack, which will trigger those notes to make a song that buffs your entire team that's in the area. Different horns have different buffs, and they range from a lot of useful things like basic attack up, defense up, as well as different kinds of skills like earplugs and environmental resistances. When you consider that 4 players are getting these buffs in multiplayer, the hunting horn really starts to show its value. But here's where I have to mention one of the things that probably leads to why the hunting horn gets such a bad rap. And that's that we can't forget that those buffs, those notes, are attacks. A lot of people seem to tend to stand in a corner in a fight, play their songs, and then go in and start hitting the monster. They do damage. The point is to hit the monster with those notes as you form your songs. In fact, one of the changes that was made for Monster Hunter World is that your recitals now do the majority of your damage, so they're really trying to incentivize you to be hitting the monster when you're playing your songs. And you'll see in the gameplay I have playing in the background that that's exactly what I generally try to do, except in very specific scenarios like when I'm approaching the monster or when the monster's running away, just to get my speed boost buff up. I'm pretty much always hitting the monster with my notes. There's really no point not to. Especially when we look at the hunting horn's moveset. Now, I mentioned a movement speed buff just a second ago, and that is the one song that all hunting horns have in common, no matter what their notes are. You play your basic note twice, and when you do a recital, you get a speed buff. If you do the recital again for that, you no longer bounce for any of your attacks during the duration of the buff. That speed buff, while your weapon is out, really helps keep you mobile and keeping up with the monster. Combined with the fact that the hunting horn has pretty big range on all of its attacks, and that their trajectories kind of hit in all sorts of directions. You can basically hit all around your hunter at any given time. As well as having that speed buff, it makes it really easy to target the monster's weak points or, their head for KOs, even if that's not necessarily their weak point. You'll see there's several times in the gameplay I have going there that I literally hit the monster's head directly behind my character. And there's several moves on the hunting horn that can do that. That kind of maneuverability is what makes it possible to play your songs while hitting the monster. And another thing I just mentioned in the middle there is hitting the head for KOs. The hunting horn, like the hammer, is a blunt weapon, so if you repeatedly hit the head of the monster, you can KO them, which contributes to another element of supporting the team, giving your entire team a chance to attack. When you look at all that, it's really not that big a price to pay to do just a little bit less damage than a lot of the other weapons do. And on top of that, Monster Hunter is really not the kind of game that you can look at as a vacuum where max DPSs and things like that are all that matter. The ease of use in weapons and just kind of how well they suit your playstyle play a huge factor in how much damage you can do. And personally, I feel like with that mobility and those long-reaching attacks, the Hunting Horn is pretty easy to learn and do well with. And again, even in solo, you only suffer maybe a couple extra minutes per quest with that slightly less damage that you do. So if you do find that you like the playstyle, there's no reason not to use it. All in all, I think a big part of the reason the Hunting Horn gets that bad rap is partially because, yes, it does kill things a little slower in single player, but I think people get the misperception that that will carry over to multiplayer when in fact its performance improves with each additional teammate. In addition to that, another reason it gets that reputation, I think, is because people's lack of understanding of how to play it, which again, being aggressive while playing those songs to get the buffs up for your team. Just like every other weapon in Monster Hunter, it really does pay off when you give it a try and learn how it's supposed to be done. And that just about does it from me for now. If you guys have any input or questions you want to make about the Hunting Horn, feel free to go ahead and leave those in the comments. And if you want to see the unedited footage of the hunts I have in the background, they are on my channel, as well as there should be just a couple of little clips of the failures that went along in these hunts at the end of this video for your entertainment. Until next time.